Channel 114. Visitry. Channel 114.
Good evening and welcome to today's edition of Roundtable Talk. Today we are going to be talking about consumer protection, and we have an able panel with us. As you know, a bill was recently tabled in the Parliament here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we have three persons who have been intimately associated with this initiative in the persons of Junior Bacchus, a longtime consumer advocate. And by the way, congratulations on your new position since we are here. We also have Attorney at Law Danine Jones, who has also been involved in the crafting of legislation at the regional level. And we have labor expert in the person of Bonadie. Welcome to the panel. I'd like to start, first of all, by asking you, Junior, to give us a background, a historical background in respect of how consumer protection legislation and bill has been crafted here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Where did we come from? Where did we start?
Well, let me say thank you very much, Teresa. It's nice to be part of this esteemed panel. I am very pleased to be here on Visitry. I became involved at a personal level in the consumer movement early in the 1990s. Around 1991, I was invited to be part of to present a message, a feature speaker at the association AGM. And after my presentation, they said, you need to join. I joined the association, and in 1995, we were lobbying for the establishment. In the early 90s, just before 95, we were lobbying for the establishment of a standards bureau. And we were successful in getting the National Standards Council established and the Standards Bureau formed, and we know the history of the Standards Bureau now. Looking at all these different standards that are required in the manufacturing and other sectors, and service sector as well. In 1995, the then administration decided to try to bring all the different consumer protection pieces into one law, because we had price control law, the Price Control Act, we had other small pieces of legislation, but they didn't give an overall protection to the consumer. So we started in 1995. We had public consultation during that year. We went on to 1996, and nothing actually got into Parliament. There was consultation, things died down, nothing happened. In the early 2000, 2003, 2004, we at a regional level, the CARICOM body decided to move for a legislation that all the islands could adopt from which we could adopt our various national laws. So we had several meetings across the region, And actually we drafted, in 2008, this was the draft model law for consumer protection from CARICOM.
In 2008?
In 2008, this was established, and the islands, Jamaica, and other islands did their model from this. For the OECS, though, we decided we will want to have a harmonized law where St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Kitts, and all the other islands will try to have one law or a similar structure, because we're moving towards the single market and economy. We got going first in St. Lucia, but there were some concerns by the St. Lucia consumer movement that the model was not working, and I sort of influenced the administration then not to proceed in a rush. Let us see what happened in St. Lucia. Let us learn from the experiences, and then we will pick up from Guyana and Jamaica, and then we try to craft our legislation. And I must say, the Attorney General's office worked with us. We did other models. We actually got a piece of legislation to Parliament a few years ago, but when Parliament fell for the end of the year to get into budget, that legislation didn't get to the final stages. So I lobbied and pushed Sir Louis Straker to make the crowning of his parliamentary life, make the consumer protection legislation something he must celebrate. And I am very pleased with the leadership that Sir Louis gave when we went to the select committee meeting. All through the COVID pandemic, we were working in Parliament at select committee level to get the legislation done, and I am pleased of what we had. So we have before us now a very modern and progressive consumer protection bill. And I say that not because it's my opinion. It is because I shared the draft with my colleagues from the consumer movement in Jamaica. I had my friends in St. Lucia, Kingsley, and others review it, other colleagues in Guyana and in Dominica. So they all review the draft that we had, make a recommendation, and they actually guide me in presenting our position at the select committee level, which Bonds will attest, which we by and large adopted most of what we thought was necessary. And I know Danine will get into the details of it, but I am pleased that we have the legislation passed in the House, and I don't know yet if it was gazetted, but I understand it was gazetted on the 1st.
I don't think it has been gazetted as yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it is, the legislation itself has a period of up to 2 years, and even within the 2-year period, the government can adopt sections of it. If you don't have everything else in place, you can hold those back, adopt sections. But within 2 years, if the government did nothing, it will officially, everything in the legislation will automatically go into place. So I am pleased with what is there, and I know the commercial sector, the business community who participated were very pleased as well, and everybody wouldn't get everything that they wanted, but we can say St. Vincent is leading the region now in progressive consumer protection law.
Danine, you have worked with the OECS. You were part of a contingent that worked on the Model Consumer Protection Bill. Let's hear a little bit about your experience where that is concerned, and how we have gotten to where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Teresa, and thanks for inviting me here today to speak about consumer protection, which is very dear to me. Consumer protection actually goes hand in hand with competition law, and hopefully we will see that coming on stream soon as well. In terms of the regional initiative, the OECS Commission, the OECS, realized the importance of consumer protection to not only consumers but also to businesses. Competition and consumer protection allows business to be carried on in a way that is ethical. It protects consumers against behavior that could damage competition. and it also protects the business community in terms of ensuring that there is a level playing field. So consumer protection from a regional level was one of the things, the key areas that the OECS wanted to see happen. And as was said by Junior, in terms of having under the revised Treaty of Bastille, having a single economy, it is important to have harmonized laws for consumer protection and for competition. So in terms of that, I was part of a contingent that came across. We toured the OECS region because it was recognized that OECS needed to do this together as a region. Barbados went ahead. They have a very good structure in place, very good administration. They have a single body that deals with both consumer protection and competition. Jamaica as well. They have both of them have fair trading commissions, which deal with consumer protection and competition. And so in the OECS, it was thought then, and still I believe now, that it was important to look at this on a regional level. So OECS at the time drafted a model bill for the OECS. And we then toured, we had training done, of course, because it's necessary to train the persons who are going to administer the bill. So we had training on a regional level in different countries in the OECS. And then we embarked on what was essentially a marketing exercise to let people, stakeholders, and consumers and businesses know exactly what was in that model bill. So that took place in August of 2016, and I was part of that contingent, who I also came to St. Vincent with that contingent. It is heartening to see that we are at this stage where this is going to become a reality. There were many aspects of the bill that at the time we were uncertain about, in terms of, for instance, who would be the ones who would be adjudicating on matters. We didn't want to scare away the public and have the public have to go to a court. Because without consumer protection, without the bill itself, even though we do have some consumer protection legislation in different pieces, as Junior would have said, different piecemeal pieces, such as the Sales of Goods Act and so on, and the act which allows you to have price control. We do have consumer protection.
We do. Right?
We do.
We'll talk some about that when we come back from our first break.
Yes.
Back in just a moment.
One scratch card, 3 games, 16 chances to win. Win with a top prize of $125,000. Unbelievable but true. It's the new $10 scratch game. $125,000 jackpot. Loaded with lots of cash prizes, $100, $1,000, $10,000, and $125,000. Get your ticket from any lotto agent or scratch runner. $125,000 jackpot. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, this country's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, revealed that the NIS has seen a 40% increase in contributions at the end of 2019 when compared to the same period in 2002. The Minister of Fisheries, the Honorable Sabato Caesar, has denounced the idea by NDP prospective candidates to establish a dolphin park for persons to swim with dolphins. And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves reveals that his wife and son are both battling severe medical conditions.
And in your local sports, Greg's Zidane Sam was the top goal scorer in the recently concluded Premier Division of the National Club Championships. And a brace each from Jamal Bishop and Jasim James gave Lower Camden Park a 4-0 win over South Leeward Masters.
Join us this evening at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Updates.
Welcome back. Before we took our first break, Danine, you were talking about the fact that we do have consumer protection, some measure of consumer protection, but not an overarching bill. We want to talk a little bit more about that, but I'd like to bring in Burns, his perspective as far as his involvement has been in crafting or being a part of the select committee for the overarching bill that we are now seeing that has emerged.
Okay, let me, like you, Teresa, and Danine, congratulate my good friend, Mr. Junior Bacchus, to be appointed as a consul for India. You represent the country with 1 million times more people than Senegal. This is a great honor.
Thank you.
So let me congratulate you. And to say further that you were a one-man crusader in the past.
Yeah.
And when you speak about your involvement in the consumer protection operation, I remember the guy McLean in Barbados. You remember?
Yes, I know him.
He
knew him.
was a one-man wrecking ball, standing up. I remember I lived there at the time when he had a long session in relation to the electricity rates in the country. And so it was an honor for me to sit on the select committee. And I want to commend to the legal team. They worked very hard. And I must agree with Junior that the participation by the business community was a welcome sight. It's not always you have that. Them participating at the level of the select committee, making sure that they're there. And I want to congratulate them. One thing I must say, and I made a little mark here, that people believe the exclusion in relation to the consumer thing, your contract or service does not put you into that category. What it says, people who do things for free, and if you're on a contract of personal service, an employment contract,
Yes.
you're not covered there. That is a different
That's
arrangement.
A personal arrangement, yes.
But one of the things that struck me during the course of the select committee's discussions was someone raised the question, and they related it to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Consumers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have become very... previously, people would order vehicles through an agent. Now, every man on their own sometimes.
Yes.
And they pay for vehicles which they never receive. And that came up in the discussion, you would recall.
Yes.
What happens? And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was making the point that they have made several requests, government to government. But of course, in those countries, they don't want to tangle too much in the consumer operation to say, well, go after some agent or somebody who, and that is a problem in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in relation to you take your hard-earned money, you order something from Japan and it never arrives. How do you get redress? Now, we can manage those things here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but it was a good example as to what we could do, and it is included in the bill. As was just pointed out, once you have your staff, once you're up and running, you can get redress. And I believe that as a labor leader, Junior made a point, and I recall in relation to the Standards Bureau, that sometimes people order stuff. I remember some years ago, so a lot of stuff came in being sold and so on. And the cycles were different. And people bought up these things, and then what do? You know, this will take care of that, and which is a very good thing.
And someone wants to know, will this bill tie into an expedited arbitration process? How will this bill help persons who get ripped off in the construction industry and disputed resolution?
If I could take that question, there are essentially 4 aspects of redress under the bill. 5, you can say, because your first recourse is to go to the supplier, the person who is the businessman. You indicate your complaint and you say what's the issue. If you don't get any redress there, then you can go to the department, and the department will then investigate and adjudicate. Now, I want to make it very clear that there have been some issues in relation to that. JFTC, the Jamaica Fair Trading Commission, actually had a case in relation to that. And we know now that there must be separation in relation to the investigation and the adjudication. So there's the department who can do it. Then there's also the tribunal. So we have a tribunal, a 3-man tribunal, who will be headed by an attorney who can also adjudicate on the matter. You have the court, because appeals can go to the court. So the court can look at it, and the court can even look at it from the outset. The court can ask the department or the tribunal to stand down on this particular matter, and they would be the ones who would adjudicate on it. And we have a conciliation where there's mediation. So you can choose a mediator, and that mediator, which is probably the most consumer-friendly aspect of redress, where the mediator can hear both parties, because mediation is supposed to be win-win. Hear both parties, see the interests, see if you can come to some agreement. That agreement would be an agreement which can be enforced, because it would be a binding agreement on the parties and can be enforced. So there is redress under the bill.
How easy is it for someone to actually pursue the entire process of getting redress?
I think it's easy enough, because right now we do have the process where if, say for instance, you go to a store, some people come and complain that when we had training and so, people would say that they just bought a shoe, and as they walked out the road, the shoe heel fell off, and they went to the departments. But what the department had to use was moral suasion. Now, they don't have to use moral suasion, they have an act to back it up. So you can easily go and you can make it in writing, or you can make it orally. So for those persons who may have some disability, or they may not be able to read or write, they can make their complaint orally, and the department will take the statement. They will investigate, and then if they have a finding that there was something that was done that was wrong, some practice that was wrong, according to what's in the bill, then that will be redressed. So I think it is easy enough to actually get redress under this bill, under this piece of legislation.
I want to talk about the rights of the consumer a little bit. What exactly are the rights of a consumer, and who really can be considered a consumer at the same time?
Well, the consumer is basically, in fact, in the law, we have a definition. I don't know if I could pick it up quickly here, but the consumer is someone who buys goods or service from a supplier. I will put it in a simple language. Someone who buys something from a supplier for their use, for personal use. I'm trying to make it simple.
Yes.
So if you buy some goods to
Some ice cream,
resell,
for instance,
and
no?
if you plan to resell the goods, when you buy the goods, you are not a consumer. You are a consumer if you buy the goods for your use. So the end user basically is who we are protecting here. If you buy to resell, then you are a supplier, in fact. So you're not really covered here. You will have to be covered by another law that will address you and your initial supplier, maybe your manufacturer and so on. So in terms of your rights, the United Nations have, since 1960, in the 1960s, establishes the basic rights of consumer. I will try to remember some. I don't promise I will give you all. But those that are very critical to us, the right to choose, right? Safety, I'll highlight the term, safety, choice, information, redress. Those are some of the basic rights of consumers, information, education, and all of those are a healthy environment. You have a right to have a safe and healthy environment. So this bill actually protects consumer, all those rights that you have enshrined by the United Nations. But I want to go a little back to that issue that the person said, the message that came in about construction.
Yes, the person is also saying that they'd like to hear more on the expedited resolution.
Okay, I will touch a little quickly on that. Let me use construction, and there's another critical one that a lot of people complain to us about, the Consumer Association, about the issue of mechanics. Say they're going to fix your vehicle, and then they're doing their trial and error run, charge you something, they mess up something, and then tell you to buy another part and all that. This bill, this act, is going to address that once and for all. In the area of the construction, you hire some persons to do a job. In mechanics, you hire somebody to fix your vehicle. They first must give you an assessment. If the job is construction, assess what it requires, what it's going to cost. And you will have the right to decide if you want that job to be done and within a time frame. No longer you're just calling somebody and hire them, and you could, if they come and they hire you, or you hire them to do something and you're not satisfied, if they did not give you an invoice or a budget or some proposal to establish what you're going to do and the price, you can walk away. The consumer have the right.
We'll talk some about that when we come back after this second break.
Channel 114. Visit you. Channel 114.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, this country's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, revealed that the NIS has seen a 40% increase in contributions at the end of 2019 when compared to the same period in 2002. The Minister of Fisheries, the Honorable Bacchus, has denounced the idea by NDP prospective candidates to establish a dolphin park for persons to swim with dolphins. And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves reveals that his wife and son are both battling severe medical conditions.
And in your local sports, Greg's Zidane Sam was the top goal scorer in the recently concluded Premier Division of the National Club Championships. And a brace each from Jamal Bishop and Jasim James gave Lower Camden Park a 4-0 win over South Leeward Masters.
Join us this evening at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Updates.
Welcome back. Dan Jr., you were developing a point before we took that last break. I don't know if you would like to expand or complete.
Well, we know time is limited, and so I will try to make things as concise as possible. You have a problem with a construction person or a mechanic or anyone who providing you with a service or a good, you take your complaint to the department. I must interject here, Danine, that you can also take your complaint to the National Consumers Association. We have a system. You can take your complaint also to the Standards Bureau, because if it is a question of a defective good, if there's some
So
issue,
we do have a functioning National Consumers Association.
Yes, we do have. Yes, and we have been receiving complaints over the years. Yes, it was. Most of the time it was you're hearing Junior Bacchus and the late from Annisvale, the Bonzi. Names just slipped me a while ago. But we do, we're in this point of rebuilding. But what we do with the Ministry of Trade is for us to work out where, if it's a complaint coming up from a government department, let's say VINLEC or from CWSA, then the association will take precedence in those cases, because it will become like going Caesar to Caesar, because government owned and government department. But if it's a complaint coming from a store or a private business, then it's better to deal with the Consumer Affairs Department. So we had that arrangement for the last 20 plus years, and I don't see why we should change it. We just have to strengthen ourselves, and in cases where the association can't handle it, then they can go to the department, because they have several persons working in complaints investigation. Mm-hmm. So you take your complaint to the department. As Daniel said, you could write it, you could articulate it verbally. If you articulate it verbally, somebody will write it, and then you could just make a mark or a sign. That is your complaint. And then from there, the officer or the person in the Consumer Association will go to the person they are complaining about to investigate, see if it is worthwhile. Let me say, a lot of time people come with their complaint, but they don't bring their receipt. If it's a product, they don't bring a receipt. You can't, as a consumer advocate, you can't, as an investigator, take a complaint and you don't have a receipt. So consumers must be aware that if you buy a good, get your receipt, demand your receipt, and keep that receipt, so that if there is a problem down the road, you can use your receipt to prove that you bought this good. So that is critical. If you don't have a receipt, the officer really can't do much.
What about if the receipt is barely legible?
Well, that is a matter that the standards will have to investigate. The Ministry of Trade will have to deal with that because they're printing. You must have. I think the law also addresses it.
The law addresses it actually.
So,
the law requires each business to, even if you're just, nobody's exempted under this. The Crown is even bound by this act. So you're supposed to provide a receipt to the consumer. Yeah. The law says what is supposed to be on the receipt. So your trading name must be on the receipts, the date of purchase, and you notice now that a lot of receipts by 2-3 weeks, the wording of it is gone, right? But the act requires that the receipt that is printed and given to the consumer it has to be on proper paper that would allow you to see the information for quite some time. So it can't be that you're giving me a receipt that now I can't produce to the department to prove. This is how I'm going to prove that I actually bought something from X person. So I have to be able to prove, and the act requires that be done.
Yeah.
And it's actually an offense.
It's an offense, yes.
If you don't do it.
And because they're talking about $2,000 to $5,000 fine and all that.
Yes.
Anyway, so when you finish making that complaint, investigation is done, you may resolve it at that point. If you do not resolve it, let's say there's no agreement, then you take it to the next step, where the complaining officer could recommend it now for the tribunal to address. The tribunal could take the information, and the tribunal is not a court, not like the magistrate court where you have to wait so long before you have summoned and so on. Within 7 days or so, the tribunal could hear your matter once they have all the information and resolve it at that point. So you do not have to stay long. When we were creating the structure of the tribunal, we use the small courts in the United States as a model. Judge Judy kind of thing, where you have a quick decision and you have the matter resolved. But the tribunal also have teeth. So you could resolve it right at the level of the tribunal, and you don't have to have a lawyer. You don't have to hire a lawyer to go and represent you. I could go to the tribunal with a consumer as their consumer advocate to represent them and support them in the matter. Any other person can do that.
That the bill also makes provision for the Consumer Association.
Yes.
Okay.
The bills in the bill. And they can go before judicial people and so on and so forth and put the case on behalf of the consumer.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's also in the bill.
Why do consumers need protection? Who would like to take that one? Why do consumers really need protection?
Well, I'll give you an example. I went to Australia years ago. I had a gift from one of my old aunts in America, pocket watch. And I took it to a watch place. The fellow looked at it. He said, "What is the position?" I told him. He said, "Okay." And he gave me a receipt and tell me the cost of repairing this watch is $40.
Yeah.
Now, I want to reverse back and come here to St. Vincent now. You will not get that here.
No.
They say, when I finish fixing the watch, I'm going to tell you how much it costs.
And this is what this law requires now.
So
it have to be like that.
If what he thought might be wrong with the pocket watch, and he had to do more, he could not change what he would have given me and that receipt. And he told me that.
Yes.
So this is why this is really very important.
Yeah.
And it covers the people who take the cars into a garage. They can't tell you how much it's going to cost until they finish. Depending on how long it stays.
But Teresa, consumer always need protection because there's always unscrupulous business people out there. There are some who are genuine, but there are some who will want to sell you an expired item. Some will want to exploit you with the service they are offering you. So we always need protection. And we were basically over the years with our hands in the air looking for some help. And this legislation is really very timely to address that.
Okay, and there's a question. Someone wants to know, I don't know, my computer is giving me some sort of trouble, but someone wants to know, can you indicate whether or not there would be a fact sheet or an informational brochure on the horizon to help persons seeking guidance and answers about the various topics and processes covered by the consumer protection legislation? If so, where and how would they be accessed?
Well, I am not sure about whether or not there would be a brochure. I would hope that there would be one. I know that one of the things that would be done would be to market this, because it's a voluminous bill. It's very big. So you would have to go through sections by sections. What we did on a regional level, we decided to have town hall sessions. And we went to the radio stations. We also did TV programs. And we spoke to stakeholders, government stakeholders, the ones who would be administering the bill. So that is what we had done on a regional level. On a national level, each country would decide how best they would inform the public of the legislation and what's in the legislation. So I'm hoping to see something similar that was done on the regional level, like having town halls. It's important to have the associations, the associations leading that, because I think rather than having lawyers and government persons push this bill forward, it would be good to have the ordinary consumer. We are all consumers. But people need to relate to persons who they believe are just like them. And you had asked that question about why consumers need to be protected. And that's not a very strange question. It's actually a question that was even asked in jolly old England, where, you know, people would say that, oh, consumers are being protected. But what they found they had to do in 2015 was to do something similar to what we are doing now, or what we had planned a long time ago. And they realized that you needed to shift the balance of power. The power was more towards the persons who would provide services and products. And the consumers did not have that sort of power. So this bill gives the power to those persons. So we're hoping that in terms of marketing, the association will lead the charge in doing so.
Okay, good.
Well, I must say, before you take your break, I must say that in conversation last week with the Department of Trade, the department has made provision, or should I say requested through the budgetary process for, after 18 years, for some money to come to the Consumer Association so that we could do a lot of those kind of things that required out there.
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yes.
The right person sitting here. A fact sheet.
Yeah.
That should be number one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because this, for any of us to come here with this 152 not sections, 152 clauses in this bill to study and to share, it will not be easy. So what we will have to do is to take this bill, take this act, and extract, simplify the information, into a little booklet, that we could take around to the different communities, and we have our consultations, we have our education sessions. So you're going to see a lot of that, I think, in the upcoming year. Okay. So persons will become aware.
In our legal process here, mediation is now the thing.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of mediators,
approved
mediators by the court.
Yes.
Who
And we'd like to talk some more about that, the mediators. Back in just a moment.
One scratch card, 3 games, 16 chances to win. With a top prize of $125,000. Unbelievable but true. It's the new $10 scratch game. $125,000 jackpots loaded with lots of cash prizes: $100, $1,000, $10,000, and $125,000. Get your ticket from any lotto agent or scratch runner. $125,000 jackpots. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, this country's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, revealed that the NIS has seen a 40% increase in contributions at the end of 2019 when compared to the same period in 2002. The Minister of Fisheries, the Honorable Bacchus, has denounced the idea by NDP prospective candidates to establish a dolphin park for persons to swim with dolphins. And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves reveals that his wife and son are both battling severe medical conditions.
And in your local sports, Greg's Zidane Sam was the top goal scorer in the recently concluded Premier Division of the National Club Championships. And a brace each from Jamal Bishop and Jasim James gave Lower Camden Park a 4-0 win over South Leeward Masters.
Join us this evening at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Updates.
Welcome back. Before we took our last break, we were talking about the mediators and mediation and the role of this entire process under this new legislation. Let's talk a bit about who is a mediator, who can be a mediator, and what exactly will their role be in the process.
A mediator is a trained person. A person must have training. In the Eastern Caribbean, they're required to be on the official role of mediators who are recognized by the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. You can have training outside of that, but you would have to have some certification or accreditation from the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court to be on the role of mediators. So you have to be a recognized mediator. And that person can be a lawyer, may not be a lawyer to be a mediator. So you don't need to be a lawyer to be a mediator. Some people say it's better not to be a lawyer because you make a better mediator if you're not. And that person helps parties to see common interest. And they sit and they listen to each side, and they get each side to listen to each other. And so when persons start listening to each other rather than focusing on the dispute, they start focusing on the common interests that could lead them to a conclusion or a redress or some, meeting of the minds where they can say, okay, we can settle this matter and we could move on. I have been involved in many mediation sessions when I worked in St. Lucia. Some were successful because some matters can be mediated, some were unsuccessful, but I favor mediation. I favor it over other types of means of redress, such as arbitration and courts, because they're expensive and they're long-winded. Mediation helps persons to come together rather than to push them apart. And it's more of a win-win session than a win-lose, because at arbitration and at court, somebody must win and somebody must lose. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But in addition to that, Teresa, I'm a member of the board here. The judge in St. Vincent is the chairperson of the mediation board. But you must go through the training. and graduates, so to speak, as a mediator. It removes all the heavy financial costs. Because you pay a fee, both parties, and the mediation takes place, and it is not, well, I don't like it. No. When you finish the mediator thing, it's like the judge in the court. The blessing is there with that, and it's working. And once you're approved, for example, you could mediate here, you could go to St. Lucia, Dominica. Yes. As a matter of fact, during the course of the last graduation, so to speak, of mediators, we discovered that the Attorney General, the mediator, prior to being Attorney General, and did mediation in Bahamas and different places. So it removes all that heavy financial costs also.
Okay.
It's a good thing. Very good indeed. Yes. And, well, you're going to pick up on the question you spoke about during the break.
Yeah, but so, just before, let me just say, in respect to the Consumer Act, if we get to the point of mediation, there will be no cost to the consumer. We had indicated in our select committee discussion that the consumer should not be required to bear the cost.
Yes.
For mediation. So the ministry will provide some coverage for the consumer. So consumer shouldn't be fearful that if you don't have money to pay a mediator,
they wouldn't be able
you
to,
wouldn't get redress.
Yeah.
So that is an important difference from the existing code structure.
Yeah.
Before we go, I wanted to look at the whole question of unfair trade practices, because I think there is some sort of provision for this under the new proposed legislation. And talking about unfair trade practices, there is this pyramid scheme that appears to be making the rounds throughout the region. What sort of provisions will be in the legislation to protect persons against unfair trade practices? Such as the one I mentioned.
Yes, there are a number of unfair trade practices. Bait selling is one, where you tell somebody a particular price to entice them, and then when they get there looking to buy this thing, you suddenly have a higher price. Pyramid selling is also another one, which we commonly refer to as a pyramid scheme. So the Act contemplates that anybody who is operating such a scheme or is even involved in such a scheme, even if you're taking part as a mere participant, you are essentially breaking the law under the current Act. So it provides a very good definition of what a pyramid scheme is. And if you would permit me to just read very quickly what it says. Pyramid selling scheme means a scheme that provides for the supply of goods or services or both for reward to the participants, constitutes primarily an opportunity to sell an investment opportunity rather than an opportunity to supply goods or services, and is unfair or is likely to be unfair to many of the participants because the financial rewards of the participants are dependent on the recruitment of additional participants and not on the investment, and the number of additional participants that must be recruited to produce reasonable rewards is either not attainable or is not likely to be attained by many of the participants. So more than likely, you might be putting in a sum of money, promising
like 500 US, for instance.
For instance, you might be promised to get this big sum if you have one or two persons. So I have to recruit both Mr. Bonadie and Mr. Bacchus as as part of it.
Yes.
And if I don't do that, then I lose my initial investment of $500. So it looks good that you'll just spend $500 and you'll get back 10,000
times that or whatever. Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It is nice on the outside of it. But a pyramid scheme, when you look at what it is, when we did the training at OECS, you see that one person at the bottom trying to hold up everybody else. You know? And it's essentially that. It's an upside down pyramid. You have the burden of essentially holding up all these other participants. And as to whether or not you're going to be recovering or recouping anything, that's all up in the air. And I want to make it clear that even if you are just participating in that scheme, you are breaking the law. So if you're promoting it, if you are operating it, if you're participating in it, you are breaking the law under the Consumer Protection Act.
And you know, I just show you the thing there. You see what, Mark?
Pyramid selling.
Pyramid
selling, yeah.
It is there.
Yes.
And that's why I said, Teresa, in the beginning, this act is very progressive. And we have taken into consideration all these various elements in the trade. Yeah, so.
Okay, so I guess be warned.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the message.
Yes, that is the message.
Quite true.
Yeah, so a lot of, as the person indicated earlier, a lot of work required to be done to take this message out there to the public. So I must commend VC3
so that
for
people
leading the way
will understand.
To at least create the appetite for people to want to know more.
Because this bill include every single soul in St. Vincent.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yes, everybody.
Every single soul.
And there is the question of cross-border, addressing cross-border issues, and there are mechanisms in place, not just, okay, for example, at the CARICOM level, there is a surveillance system that is in place. So if there is defected goods in, like we had the corned beef issue so a year or two ago, if there's some defected corned beef coming out of a particular country and it get to Jamaica has the responsibility to inform all the other islands, and we could take action immediately to ban the importation and stop that. So there is that surveillance system in place to protect us.
Great. Good note on which to end. And someone is saying this bill will stop a lot of village fights, especially when people see it working well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Very interesting program. Junior Bacchus, Danine Jones, and J. Burns Bonadie. Thank you, and probably we'll come back to talk some more about this new legislation, this new piece of legislation when it's gazetted, etc., because there's more to talk about. Thank you for viewing this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. Have a great evening. My name is Teresa Daniel saying so long until next time.